I'm going to talk a little bit about sustainability. We talked about its importance. Certainly it's going to be different depending on where you are in the world. And if we could advance to the next slide, I think it's really important to talk about the different ways that we're going to get there. And in this wedge chart, right, this is really how all of aviation, whether it gets its undue fair share of sustainability focus or not, is going to do that. And when you think about the dark blue there, the technology side, and then the two shades of green, both are going to be the biggest pieces of how we contribute to getting to a decarbonized aviation society. I'm going to talk today a little bit about the dark blue and the green. GE Aerospace is on a journey at this point in time, really for the next 7 to 10 years, on investing in new technologies that will find their way into commercial aviation and business aviation in the long run. Next chart, please. So the way that our teams think about it, at the end of the day, our job is to take whatever fuel source we have, convert it to thrust in the most efficient way. Pretty simple. It doesn't matter what architecture, it doesn't matter if you're talking about hybrid electric or ducted or unducted, but how do you do that in the most efficient way? This is where we're going to spend a lot of the next 4 to 5 years really exploring these new technologies. The second part is, okay, now let's think about some different types of fuel sources, whether we're going to talk about kerosene, SAF, 100% SAF blends, and then certainly the panacea of hydrogen, which is very, very interesting. A lot of foundational work to be done in this point in time, and still a lot of understanding around contrails and the rest of those types of things that come along with hydrogen-based aviation. So it's very simple. When we talk to our teams, it's all about, think about these two mission statements. How do I convert whatever fuel I have to thrust? And then how do I open up the aperture for different types of fuels for future aviation travel? Next chart, please. So the way that we're thinking about it is really in these 4 different pillars. And I know it's going to be a little bit of a transition from international business transactions all the way down to some really nerdy technology, so I'll apologize in advance for that. But at the end of the day, there's these 4 pillars. So think about low pressure thrust. Like, how are you taking this large fan, if you will, and moving air in the most efficient way? That's called propulsive efficiency. The second pillar is really around a compact core, or the thermal side. How hot, how high temperature, how can you burn that fuel in the most efficient way, ultimately to turn that low pressure system. And then there's some real new modalities that we're really starting to involve in the large turbofan side of the market, and that's hybrid electric, which is very interesting, particularly in today's world with smaller aircraft. Battery density has come a long way, but it has a tremendous way to go. When you think about passenger aircraft in the 100-passenger region, it's going to be a while until we start to see anything that's fully electric. But there's still opportunities for us to integrate some of those hybrid electric capabilities into the turbofan and get several percentage points of efficiency along the way. So that's something that we're very interested in doing. And then the third one is ultimately these alternative fuels, in particular hydrogen. It's carbonless. It has a lot of challenges on the technology side, particularly when you take it off of the ground and put it into the air, right? We've been burning hydrogen on the ground for quite a long time, and we'll continue to do so. Once you take that and put it in an aircraft, it's a very different set of challenges and technologies to go there. But it's these 4 pillars that we're making significant investments, really the largest investments in GE Aerospace's history in the pure technology side of all of these 4 pillars. And within each one, there's probably 20 to 30 individual technologies, whether it's on the core side, on the hydrogen side, or on the propulsor side, that we're really making some strides in. I'm going to focus for the rest of this discussion on what I'll call the propulsive side of the equation. So if you could go to the next chart, please. So when you think about how can you convert that thrust most efficiently, the biggest thing you can do, the most efficient thrust in a very frictionless environment that you can't have, you want the largest fan possible turning as slow as possible, right? That is how you get the most efficient set of thrust. In today's world, we've lived in a ducted environment for 40 years. So you have a wing, in many cases, either on the back of the aircraft or underneath that wing, you have a ducted fan, ducted engine, that's ultimately making that conversion to thrust. So we've made lots of advances, whether it's on the thermal side or even in the low pressure side with gears and things like that, which are very interesting. But the reality is, if you want to grow that fan to be as big as possible, which is how you go get efficiency, you have to grow that duct that goes along with it. And as that duct gets bigger, it gets heavier, and it has very significant drag elements that at the end of the day overpower how big you can make that fan. So what we're really starting to explore, and it's not new, right? The unducted or open rotor technologies have been around for some time, but they came with some incredible challenges like noise that we have been thinking differently about. And so if we can move to this unducted technology, you're really able to multiply the propulsive benefits by 4. So instead of a couple of % improvement in a fan, I can now get 10 or something like that. And it's really interesting in the world of whether it's business aviation, commercial aviation. Certainly the narrow body space is probably where we're focusing most of these discussions. And on the right-hand side, you can see that difference on that open rotor technology. We can make the same improvements in the core technologies, but by moving to that open rotor, I can double the efficiency in what I can do on the motor, which is substantially different and delivers massive benefits both to the airframers who are selling these products, certainly the airlines flying them. Fuel is one of their largest issues in the commercial world, and that all translates ultimately to sustainability and efficiency when we think about how are we converting that thrust in the most efficient way. And so we're really looking at this new set of architectures to make this improvement. We're really aiming for it's 25% improvement, but it's roughly about 20% once you install it in an aircraft for this next generation of aircraft. Again, just so you know, we're looking at timeframes for entry into service somewhere in the mid-2030s, right? So this is not a this year thing. It's certainly not a this decade thing, but it's major investments that are going to take the next 7 to 10 years to mature, so we can then actually go design these new products and put them into service. Next, Jeff. So really the big unlock for us has been, again, we had an unducted program in the 1980s. Fuel prices dropped. It had some significant noise challenges, and so largely aerospace moved away from that. We've been investing both in our tools and with some new availability of supercomputing. We have access to the Frontier computer at Oak Ridge Laboratories. It is an exascale computer. It is the largest computer in the entire world. We have developed code that runs on this computer and actually does a lot of the analytical solving all the way down to the molecular level, right? And this has really enabled us to take this open rotor technology, which on its face is easy, right? You have this big fan, no duct, that's great, you get the propulsive benefits, but we've been able to do it. We've been able to solve some of the shock wave challenges and the acoustics challenges such that we now have a product, and we have now demonstrated in wind tunnels that we can achieve the same noise levels as a 737 or an A320 today. So it's the same or better noise levels with 20% more fuel efficiency. So this is really the big unlock for us, is why we're going massively right now to mature these technologies. There are a lot of challenges when you think about an open rotor technology that have to be solved at the aircraft level. How you install, a 14-foot fan, right? You're talking for a 737, you're talking about a fan diameter roughly the size of the fuselage, right? That's a very large fan. So how you install that matters. So we're working a lot with the airframers to do that. Certainly how you position the wing behind this fan technology is so important. And so that is a lot of the work that we're doing with a lot of the commercial aviation airframers, and we're really making a lot of headway in terms of how we do that. But we've solved the noise challenges. We're really moving forward with some demonstrations. We have hundreds of rig tests going on at any given time, and we're really looking forward to this middle to latter part of the decade where we're going to have some prototypes that we're going to both test on the ground. We're going to put them on our flying test bed, and then we've made some arrangements to actually fly them on some of the large airframers test beds as well, as they really get to know this. Our priorities in the world are mature the technology in a timely manner as quickly as we can, and make sure the industry, whether it's airlines, airframers, the flying public, by the way, is going to have a vote on this, really understand the benefits of this technology and why the time ultimately is now. One of the things I do want to point out in this open rotor conversation, people go, hey, that's great, that looks just like a fancy turboprop, and it's okay, it doesn't have a case, so you've got me there. But we're talking about a jet that'll travel for the narrow body space at exactly the same narrow body speeds. We're not going back to Mach 0.4, right? We're still at the Mach 0.8, Mach 0.9, where you'll see a lot of commercial jet travel. So it is really a product that fits well within the framework of today's routes and structures, what the airlines are going to ultimately want. And it brings technology and sustainability, by the way, which is the ultimate driver behind all of this, so that we all can continue to fly to the places we want to in the aircraft that we find so important to our businesses and ultimately to our lives. So one last chart for me. Maybe not. So we are very much into the testing. Like I said, we've got a number of different rigs going on this year. These flight tests are going to take place here in the next part of the decade, and we very much look forward to ultimately how we're going to go mature this technology going forward. So I see a couple of questions here. It says, how will passengers feel about going back to a propeller-powered aircraft? I think that's really great. So part of it is going to be public perception. If you think about it, in a commercial world, it all has to be under the scope of safety, right? So people look at a turboprop, they might not like it, maybe they think it's loud or it's noisy or it has vibrations. Those are the heritage of a turboprop. So if we're able to solve those, and those are right on the top of our list in terms of the things that we ultimately want to be able to deliver to those customers, then it's just about, okay, now I'm looking at something different, right? If it's safe, if it's comfortable, now I'm just looking at something different. And at the end of the day, if you can deliver that fuel efficiency, which, by the way, is going to translate at some point in time to ticket price, right? People, we believe, will make the choice with their wallets at the end of the day if there's a very big difference between different types of aircraft. I think there's also an element of certain customers who are that's the new kind of technology, it's sustainable, I think that's a good thing, so therefore I might choose it because I think it's better and different. So I think at that element, I think it's going to be really important. There was another question around, does business aviation care about fuel burn? I'm certainly not the expert there, right? You guys probably are. But at the end of the day, if you can ultimately have more efficient travel, at the end, I think sustainability is going to be here, and it's going to be different whether in Europe or if you're in Asia or the US in terms of its focus. But the ability to continue to work through that, I think, is going to be an important thing. Let's see. Is it better to have aft fuselage above wing? So I think at the end of the day, it's most efficient for the airplane to have the engines ultimately in the center. So think whether they're above wing or below wing, it's most efficient to have them in the center of the aircraft from a center of balance perspective. So I think whether you put them above or below, there are some benefits and detractors to both. I don't think there's one answer. But all of these technologies, be them above, below, or frankly in the rear, certainly are viable as you kind of think about that. What we're looking, the first turbojet or turbo fan application, again, we believe this is going to be something that's going to be entering into service in the mid-2030s. We expect the technology to be developed through the tail end of this decade. We'll start a product development program that will probably start in the very later part of this decade or the early part with entry into service in the mid-2030s or a little bit after that. And then, great question on hydrogen. I think hydrogen is incredibly interesting. We all know how it works. Again, we burn it on the ground. The big challenges around hydrogen are if you're going to do it efficiently and if you're going to do it in an aircraft that has a certain amount of passengers on it, you're going to have to do it liquid, right? So now you're talking about cryogenic, very high pressurized tanks, and how are those going to fit in aircraft? Real challenges. You can't just put kerosene in the wing. You can't do that same type of an example with hydrogen. So I think there are real benefits there. We are doing technology exploration today on how you combust hydrogen at altitude. It is different. And I think the world is going to move to hydrogen. We can all debate on when it's going to be. It's certainly not this or, frankly, the next decade. So I think we're going to continue to look and see how those go, and ultimately, as we mature it along, and frankly, as the ecosystem comes along with it, right? It's not just about can your aircraft burn hydrogen, it's can you get hydrogen to that aircraft in whatever facilities that you're at. So I think it's really, it's going to come. The question, as you kind of said, is when. And the last question was, what was the work done in the 80s to help advance the technology? So the work that was done in the 80s in what was called the UDF at the time was really to go out there and show that this propulsive technology can work. It was different. That technology, basically counter-rotating angled props in the back of the aircraft, very complex, very challenging internal gear system to that product. And what we've been able to do is prove that the unducted technology works. The things that we've done here in the last decade are really unlock the challenges that came with that. Again, in the unducted program, it was aft mounted, and the shock waves coming off the rotor blades dented the side of the aircraft. I mean, that's the kind of acoustic challenges that you're talking about. So we've been able to solve some of those, and that's where we're ready to kind of move forward relative to how this is going to work in a commercial aviation setting. So I think if there's no more questions, I will finish here. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.